1977, two airplanes collided on the Canary Islands and 583 people died. In 1986, the Challenger launched. 73 seconds later, it exploded over the Atlantic Ocean and all 7 people aboard died. In 2010, an oil rig exploded and sank in the Gulf of Mexico, spilling 3 million barrels of oil and killing 11 workers. What do all those things have in common other than the fact that they're tragedies? What they have in common is that there was someone at each of these places that knew something was wrong. They knew they should say something, but they didn't feel safe enough to do so. They didn't feel psychologically safe enough to speak up against those in authority. Psychological safety is not a new feeling. It's not a new concept. We all know what it feels like to want to say something, but feel like we just can't. But it wasn't until 1999 that Dr. Amy Edmondson coined the term psychological safety. And she defines it as being able to speak up, say something if you see something, and realize that there's no harm going to come to you. That's what psychological safety is. Think about the space that you occupy on a daily basis. Do you feel safe? If you're a student in the classroom, is your space safe? If you're a professor, is your space safe? No matter where you are, is your space safe? I've created a model, and the model is easy to remember because the acronym spells THRIVE. This model, if we all practice it as individuals, as businesses, we are helping make our space psychologically safe, and we are contributing to the psychological space of others. The first component of this model is T for training. Training is how you improve your team dynamics. Training is where you get the resources to find out what psychological safety is. We get trained every year on what to do in the event of an active shooter. If you're in academia, you get trained on FERPA. How many of you get trained on what psychological safety is? How many of us are trained to handle conflict, which often contributes to our spaces feeling unsafe? So training is a key component of this model. The next component of this model is harmony. In the past, there was always this push for work-life balance, and work-life balance is good, guys, it is. You need to balance your work life and your home life. But now there's this big push towards work-life harmony, because researchers, specifically Chibs Okereke, says that our personal lives and our work lives intersect. And instead of trying to keep them apart, let them intersect, because they can enrich one another. And this doesn't mean that you have to come to work and share every personal thing about you. What they're saying is that if there are two wives in this space that can identify with each other because they have husbands in the military, let that bond happen. If there are two fathers that can identify because they have sons playing football, let that bond happen. And when that bond happens, it's creating safe spaces. The next part of the model is respect. R for respect. In 2008, there was a study done, 20,000 employees around the world. And each one of these employees says that they want the number one attribute of their leaders to be respect. They want to be respected, and they in turn will give respect. Respect does not mean that you accept or agree with everything someone says. That's not what it means. Respect means, okay, we disagree, but let's not be disagreeable. We can do this the right way. And respected people will speak up. And that's what this model is all about, getting people to speak up when they see something wrong. The next component of the model is inclusion. We hear diversity and inclusion all the time, right? Those words are everywhere. Diversity is my reality. I'm a Black woman. Inclusion is my choice. I get to choose who I want to sit at my table. I get to choose who I want to conversate with me. I went to a basketball game several years ago to watch my son play basketball. And while I was at the game, I noticed that no one would throw the ball to Charlie. And it was so obvious. There was no harmony out there. No, I don't care how close Charlie got to the basket. He could wave his arms, he could stump his feet. They would not throw him that ball. And so when we got home, I asked my son, what was up with keeping the ball away from Charlie? And he said, well, Mom, in the game of basketball, we have this phrase called know your personnel. You have to know who's on the court and what they can do. Charlie was filling in for someone, one of the starters. He just didn't have the skills. He just couldn't play as well as we could. And we knew if we threw him the ball, all he was going to do was turn it over to the other team. So what they said to Charlie, without verbally saying it, you don't matter, Charlie. We don't respect you. You're not a part of this team. You can't help us. And what inclusion says, if Charlie's out there, if he's near the basket and he's open, you need to make him a part of the conversation, pass him the ball. Because who put Charlie out there without giving him the proper training? Who put him out there to be disrespected by his members? And that was not a safe space for Charlie. Who was Charlie going to tell, you know? At that moment, they didn't make Charlie feel like a valued member of the team. And that brings us to the next component of the model, V for valued. Value is the emotional response you get from being respected. Valued people will speak up. They'll tell you when there's something wrong with them. They really will. And at that moment, Charlie had no one to tell because everybody on the team were alike. He was the different one. They didn't include him. And so you have to make sure that you're making your space, people in your space and yourself feeling valued. If you put all these things together, you end up with an empowered person. The last component, E for empowerment. The root word of empowerment is power. An empowered person will tell you if there's something wrong. Why? Because you've given them the power to. You've given them the power to speak their mind. And so they will tell you when there's something wrong. Let's go back to the beginning when I told you about those 3 awful tragedies. Let's go back. Imagine if on that runway, that co-pilot had said, "Sir, we have not been cleared to take off. Don't move this plane." Imagine if he had felt empowered enough to say that. Imagine if that engineer had said, "There is a problem with the O-ring that could be catastrophic. We cannot launch." Don't launch. Imagine that. Imagine if one of those workers on that oil rig had said, "We're getting some abnormal readings. We may need to retire this rig. Something's going on." Imagine how those 3 voices, the power of those 3 voices could have changed history as we know it today. You all have a voice. You do. And whether you know it or not, your voice is powerful. And I want you to use that voice to create a space where you can thrive.